Indiana, Curt Cignetti has, I guess, pretty much finalized his staff now with Mike Ferreira as IU's director of player personnel. And that may not mean a lot to some people, but he's kind of sneaking in a lot of SEC flavor with the coaches, some of these coaches, and with Ferrara, who has spent time at different schools, Tennessee, but his last 2 years at LSU. These are all big time places, and he was involved in, I think, the last two top 15 recruiting classes.
Yeah.
So it's just checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it's crazy nowadays to think they almost have an NFL style setup with player personnel's GM's mentality. And these guys are tasked to go through countless hours of film and kind of break down the available talent that they have to go out and recruit. And these guys all have familiarity with Indiana because I think at one point in time they were actually there at IU, and they just kind of, pick and choose that group of kids that they're going to present to the coaching staff and say, here are the guys that we think meet all the standards we're looking for here at IU and their philosophies, and they go recruit those kids. In the old days, when I was coaching, we didn't have any of those guys. I mean, we spent countless hours watching film of kids, from December all the way up to signing day. And it was more focused on that particular recruiting class. Now these guys are a year, 2 years ahead. And that's because of what these guys are doing in these player personnel positions for the staffs and such. So a lot has changed. You're right. He's had a couple top 15 classes at LSU. And I think these have all been really good off the field hires that Coach Cignetti can utilize and count on them to bring him the possibilities of getting some top classes for IU. And that's what it's going to take to help build up the roster, their depth, as well as these first-year players, because you can't always rely on the portal to rebuild your roster all the time. At least I don't think teams can. Now, some may disagree on that, but I just think you've got to also have that first year type of player that's coming in consistently and being able to build your program with those type of kids rather than always trying to rely on the portal to do that. So definitely these guys play a big part now in college football.
Yeah, and that's something that Cignetti seems like that he is intent on doing is growing his own. And I mean, not that he's not going to use the portal. You'd be foolish not to, because there's always guys that you can grab. I mean, I always say it. Look, Indiana, man, even when they weren't on the backside of what was, the last bit of Tom Allen, they were still getting guys out of the portal from good places. And it's like, dang. So there's no doubt that if he has this a modicum of success, then first of all, the recruiting is going to go up, but the portal recruiting is going to go up. And that, if you get both of those, now you're cooking with Crisco.
Absolutely. And these guys, they compile files on these players that they're trying to recruit. And let's say they don't get the kid, but eventually down the road, he comes available in the portal. Well, they'll know everything they need to know about that particular kid that may come into the portal. And that's these guys' job. They're there to track these kids, not only the ones that come to them, but where these kids also go that they had an interest in. And if they come available down the road, in the portal, then they can go and try to get that kid to come to Indiana, knowing what they're getting And that's the key component, is knowing what you're getting overall in a kid. Otherwise, you're kind of shooting blindly in the portal. And I thought Coach Cignetti's philosophy was pretty on point when he said, I'm not looking for the guy that was the second team or third teamer at Alabama. I'm looking for guys that have actually played and have been contributors to the teams that they were a part of. And it will only enhance their ability with these kids by having these off the field personnels to help them in that regard. So it's a key component. He's put some really good guys in places for him, and it'll be interesting to see how they come out in their recruiting classes moving forward down the road.
Yeah, and it's just going to be interesting to see what Indiana looks like next year. What the offense is going to look like. Well, I mean, I know what I shouldn't say I know what we're expecting because that's a little presumptuous, but I think I know what to expect. A kind of a high octane offense that's gonna try to challenge defenses. It's gonna really try to push them and spread it out, keep them on their heels. I don't know how much he's going to incorporate the running game, because I remember the top two running backs that were there that I believe came to Indiana and transferred, they only accounted for 6 total rushing touchdowns, if my research was right, which was shocking to me because the tight end had 6 touchdowns by himself for James Madison. So I'm like, okay, do they not, either they're just balls to the walls when they get inside the red zone or down there, or they're not confident of running the ball, one of the two.
Well, you're going to see them utilize a tight end because that's a center point of what they like to do offensively, with him being a guy that they can, use in the spread offense by spreading him out. I think a lot of it had to do with they had some big plays that resulted in touchdowns. And then when they did get down there in the red zone, maybe they felt they had to use more of the passing game because everybody was, up in there in the box trying to stop the run because of the running backs they had. But I think you're right. I think you're going to see a dynamic offense, a little bit more flavor in the sense of imagination in terms of how they do things, what they do with the tight end, how they utilize the personnel on the outside, because I still think they've got a heck of a wide receiver room with what they've got there and what they brought in from the portal. And I think the biggest question is the offensive line and whether or not they can get the depth they need there and they can get them playing consistency, kind of like they did the latter part of the year last year. So, we're going to find out real quick with spring ball because that's right around the corner. I think you said the first Thursday and can't remember, in March or something like that, they're going to start with their spring ball. It goes quick, and I think it'll be exciting to see coming out of spring where they got all the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and it'll be fun. And I wonder, will spring football become a thing in Indiana? Well, actually, not spring football itself, but I meant the spring game. And I wonder what type of spring game they'll have, because there's been so many different iterations of it. Is it going to be, back in the days, it was actually a scrimmage and it was kind of fun to go watch. And then it turned into, well, let's use pillows or whatever else, and everybody's going to get hurt all of a sudden. Why does everybody get hurt now? Why was that not that it wasn't a complete concern, but it kind of wasn't, and I don't recall it happening that much.
Yeah, I think part of it is the NCAA and how they've limited what you can do in your spring game, because I think you're limited to only 3 scrimmages where it's truly 11 on 11 and tackling to the ground. So that plays a big part in it. But you're right. When I was coaching, we had the steak and hot dog game in the spring game where you had a little bit of a incentive for the teams that were playing. And we used to hold a draft and do some things there. Sometimes your depth also plays a big part of it too. I know defensively for Indiana, I think they're going to have some depth issues, especially in their defensive line, that will also play a part on how much they can or cannot do. But there's no question this first spring game for Coach Cignetti's staff will be a huge one. And hopefully it's a big opportunity for Indiana fans to come out and support it